Welcome! You found the premiere of Moderate Divide. Each episode will take a moderate, non-emotional look at two sides of a topic. Today's topic, gun control. Alright gentlemen, take 10 paces, turn, and start your debate. Well, I'm Patrick, and I'm going to be advocating for gun rights. Our country is governed by the Constitution, which includes the Second Amendment, so you can't take our guns from us, so it's probably all we're going to need. Cute. Hi, I'm George. With the continued rise of school and public shootings, it's clear that guns are at least part of the problem, and we cannot ignore their involvement. Seems to be pretty constant. Step 1, blame the guns. Yeah, we're talking gun control. Of course guns are going to come up. That seems to be a major point of contention for this debate. Are guns the cause, or just a correlation to the violence? Right, when a kid is bullied and shoots up his school, we blame the kid, we blame guns, but we need to look at the underlying issues. We need to look at the mental health issues and address those. Yes, bullying and mental health need to be addressed, but in the meantime, people are still getting guns and causing problems. So when they snap and these issues are not addressed, they get a gun and this can turn very deadly. This is why we need regulations on weapons so that we can prevent this, especially as weapons become even more powerful. Alright, but which laws would you suggest? Like, if we look at Chicago, we see a bunch of gun laws, yet we still see a bunch of gun violence. So it seems like regulations don't really work. Chicago has strict laws, but that's the only place it does. Other cities don't, so people can just get guns and bring them into the city. Well, right, but okay, we expand that to the entire country. We ban guns in the entire country. They're just going to get them from other countries. I mean, that's what happened with drugs. Ban drugs, we bring them in from other countries. If someone wants a gun, they're going to get a gun. You know, that point really seems to resonate with our social media. We have a comment here that says, if you make laws to take away guns, only the criminals will have guns. Exactly. If someone wants to kill, they're going to kill. It doesn't matter what gun laws you put in place, you're not going to change their heart. You know, you're correct. Just like a seatbelt isn't going to stop a drunk driver from driving drunk, but it might keep you safe if you end up in that situation. These laws aren't meant to change someone's heart, but hopefully they can save someone's life. That's a great slogan, but it doesn't work. You know, these laws are not saving lives. All we're doing is taking away rights from the law-abiding citizens. If we have to fight for our guns, the next thing is we're going to fight to even keep any rights at all. Well, no, I never said we should take weapons away. All I said is we need to regulate them better. Well sure, background checks, regulations, we've got those, but that's never going to be enough for some people. And if you think about it, in a lot of these states where minors have been shooting up their schools, we've already got laws saying they can't own weapons, yet they've got them. How does this happen? Criminals break the law. Right, that's what they do. So gun laws will not stop school shootings. Yeah, laws are going to get broken, but the laws provide a standard by which we can judge people. You know, like if a minor drinks alcohol, we punish the minor for drinking, but then we also punish the person who served the minor. Right, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. So let's do the same thing with weapons. If a minor gets a weapon that you left unsecured, you will be punished for that. We don't need to take away people's rights, we just need to make sure we're enforcing safety. Well, speaking of giving up rights, we have comments from two veterans giving their perspective. I took an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States and the people of our country. I went to war to protect that document, and there's no way in hell someone can take that right from me. And the other veteran says, in combat, I saw the power and destruction these weapons have to end life. Civilians do not need to carry around an M4 for sport or home protection. First, thank you both for your service. It's because of you and people like you who have risked your life or given your life that I think it's important for all Americans to protect the Constitution. Well, it's great to hear from both of these heroes. I agree that the Constitution and the amendments definitely need to be protected, but as the second vet said, these are extremely dangerous weapons, and we've seen that in the mass public shootings. Well, look, weapons are dangerous. Weapons are very powerful. People need to respect that. It was because I went hunting with my father that I knew to respect weapons. I've never once considered grabbing a weapon without giving it the utmost respect. If we try to restrict these rights, we're going to lose valuable training tools like that. Well, sadly, the people doing these mass shootings clearly don't have the respect of the weapon that you do. And the goal, again, isn't to try to take away your rights, but to make sure we're interpreting these rights in light of developing things like the M4. There's actually been a Supreme Court ruling on that topic. Oh, really? About, new and developing weapons? Yeah, the question was about a stun gun. Since that didn't exist back when the Second Amendment was written, does the Second Amendment still apply? The Supreme Court says yes. If it's a bearable arm, Second Amendment applies. You know, in 200 years since that was written, we've created so many more deadly weapons that can be considered arms you bear. You know, it's not just stun guns. We're going to be getting into a whole array of things. I get that. It's a broad spectrum, but It's the law. That is the law of the land, and it's what we gotta follow. See, I think that's part of the problem. When the scope of the law is so big that it has to cover everything, then any law you make has to also cover everything. And that means some things are gonna be extremely overregulated, and some things are gonna have giant gaping holes in security. This is how we end up with gun show loopholes. The only way this works is if we actually enforce the regulations. Right, or it just shows that regulations don't work. People will find a way. Yeah, criminals break the law. That's exactly why we need laws to punish them. Well, sure, let's look at a recent issue. The 3D printing. Someone figured out how to make a gun, and people are freaking out about that. But do you really want the government to start restricting what you can and can't print? Someone's gonna be like, that picture of a gun, you can't do that. I mean, that's where we're gonna go. But that's exactly the problem. If we have a one-size-fits-all solution, then apparently the Second Amendment covers printing as well. We need to be able to adapt for technological growth and address each issue individually. Well, speaking of regulating dangerous weapons, check out this comment. We should just ban the more dangerous weapons, ban automatic weapons and assault rifles like the AR-15. That's not an assault rifle. If you don't know what you're talking about, please don't try to take away people's rights. The AK-47, M16, those are assault rifles. The AR-15 is not. Well, one of the biggest barriers to any sort of discussion is to make sure you're on the same page. Like, if lawmakers refer to an AR-15 as an assault rifle, but gun owners say, no, assault rifle is only fully automatic weapons, we've already created a barrier to communication. I just think you need to understand the topic if you want to have any sort of effective communication. Alright, well, improper terminology aside, let's address the question. So, let's ban automatic weapons. Already done, actually. National Firearms Act says any weapon that was manufactured after 1986, if it's fully automatic, it's illegal to manufacture or distribute to civilians. Problem solved there. The AR-15, though, is not fully automatic and therefore does not fall under that restriction. Let's not focus on banning things, though. Let's look at regulating safety. Like, for instance, to drive a motorcycle or a semi, you can't just use your regular driver's license. You need a special license. Maybe high-capacity, high-magazine weapons have the same requirements. Maybe more background checks, more training is required. That concept already kind of exists for, the manufacturers and dealers. And, in general, I have no problem with background checks and regulation. My problem is when you start to try to make bans, like, across the board. That's when I feel like it starts infringing on our rights. If you look at someone and say, you specifically are not capable of handling a firearm, that could be perfectly valid, but it's based on that individual. So along the theme of individual responsibility, this commenter asks, my uncle owns dozens of guns with thousands of rounds of ammo, preparing to overthrow the government. He believes it's his right to own grenade launchers and surface-to-air missiles. How much is too much? Missiles and, launchers and things like that, those are destructive devices which are already banned. But when you start telling me how many guns I can have, to me, that gets really infringing. It starts just going down this pathway of taking away our rights. That comment brings up a good point. I was reading a study that said 3% of our population owns 50% of the weapons. So when it comes to public safety, in some ways, majority rules. If it's only a small number that has an excessive number of weapons, maybe we can add some regulation. Well, not to be too conspiratorial, but I feel if you start taking away our guns, you take away our ability to defend ourselves. You just leave us very vulnerable. That, to me, is a safety concern. So when it comes to the fight for our rights, one of the NRA's big quotes is about the good guy with a gun. Specifically the quote, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. What are your thoughts on this? Great quote. Something to think about. Anytime you call the cops, that's a good guy with a gun. So clearly we don't have a problem with the idea of a good guy with a gun. Now the police officers are great. The problem is the civilian good guys. But the cops might take a while, and if my wife is at the store, I hope and pray there's a good guy with a gun there to try to save her life and everyone else's. The problem is if a good guy with a gun runs up on a bad guy, and then another good guy with a gun comes in, is he gonna know which one's which? We've already had an incident where the police show up and accidentally shoot the good guy with a gun. So the good guy with a gun sounds great as a talking point, but we need to discuss what happens when it goes wrong. Well, yeah, absolutely. The police need to be held accountable when they encounter someone who is legally using their Second Amendment rights. The NRA does more than just talk about good guys with guns. It protects good guys with guns. Regulations like stand your ground make sure that you're not going to be penalized simply for using your Second Amendment rights. And while the NRA is there to look after your rights, we need someone who's there to advocate for our safety. Well, look, the NRA protects gun owners from a tyrannical government. We're going to protect gun owners and gun owner rights. The Second Amendment says we have the right to bear arms. period. Sure, but let's make a distinction here. The Second Amendment allows you to carry the firearm, but it doesn't absolve you from any consequences if you use that firearm. Stand your ground is meant to allow for self-defense. It's not meant to justify homicide. We'll talk about the NRA is certainly making a lot of people comment. Let me read you one final comment here. It is angering to me that the NRA uses fear tactics like their videos that are divisive and derogatory. They call me anti-American and anti-Second Amendment because I want things like gun show loopholes to be closed. You might be reasonable, and I hope you are, but just because you're reasonable doesn't mean everybody else is. These videos exist because those people exist. They want to take away our rights. The NRA simply says no. Right, but you don't want your weapons taken away because there's crazy gun nuts, and I don't want my voice ignored because there's crazy anti-gun nuts. We need to make sure we have advocates in Washington making sure everyone's voice is heard. We have 325 million people in this country. The NRA does not represent everyone. All right, put the safeties back on, guys. Let's hear your final thoughts. Well, until our concerns of safety are heard, we're going to continue advocating for common sense gun laws. I'm sorry, but no matter how loud your voice gets, we're not going to allow you to erode the rights that our country was founded on. Well, as we say here, you don't have to agree, you just have to see their point. So George, what is Patrick's point? Patrick believes that the Second Amendment trumps everything when it comes to gun control. No matter what you're talking about, safety or anything else, Second Amendment comes first. Patrick, what about George? George thinks that if we lock up our guns better, if we make more restrictions on gun ownership, that gun violence will go down. George thinks that restricting our rights is worth even the tiniest bit of extra safety. Well, thank you for joining us here on Moderate Divide. If you think we missed any points or you have something you'd like to add, just put it in the comments below. See you next time.